Daniel's ship descended slowly through the alien atmosphere, the orange clouds swirling around the landing platform. The ground below was rocky, jagged, and uneven, but the team's landing craft touched down safely, sending up small clouds of dust. He could see his team moving around the edges of the craft, Anna adjusting equipment, Ben scanning the surroundings, and Sarah checking their communication devices. Each human moved with calm precision, trained and prepared, yet aware that this planet and its inhabitants would challenge their expectations. As the hatch opened, Daniel stepped out first. The air was thin and smelled faintly of metal and sulfur. His boots crunched against the rocky surface, and he instinctively adjusted his visor to filter the harsh light. Ahead he saw them, the aliens. They stood at a distance, their tall, slender forms observing the humans. Their skin was smooth and reflective, shifting slightly in color depending on the angle of light. Their eyes, large and dark, followed each movement with precision. There were no words, no gestures, just a careful, deliberate watchfulness. Daniel studied them quietly. His mind cataloged everything: posture, positioning, possible weapon locations, and potential movement patterns. The aliens carried strange devices along their belts, some appearing like energy rifles, others like staff-shaped tools. They made no sound, yet Daniel could sense the quiet intensity in the way they held themselves. He knew from previous reports that this species respected strength, but what they truly feared was intent. Humans, unpredictable in both strategy and morality, often carried this invisible power. Anna stepped beside him, her scanner humming softly. "They're watching us," she said quietly, her voice filtered through the visor. Daniel nodded. "Yes, they're curious. But curiosity means caution, not aggression, yet." He could see the subtle shifts in the aliens' positions, the slight leaning forward or backward depending on human movement. "Notice how they're spacing themselves," he continued. "They are testing us, seeing how we react. They aren't attacking yet because they want to understand why we're here." Ben, crouching slightly with a portable sensor, pointed to a cluster of alien equipment. "They have energy weapons here and here," he said, tapping the display. "Range and power are significant. If they decide to fire, we'll need to move fast." Daniel nodded, but his expression remained calm. "Yes, but they won't fire unless we give them a reason. Fear, aggression, or carelessness triggers their response. Stay aware, stay composed, and keep to protocol." Sarah, who had been scanning for communication signals, shook her head. "No broadcast detected. They aren't talking. They're watching." Daniel took a slow breath, allowing himself to relax slightly. "Exactly. Silence is their observation method. If we make sudden moves or show fear, we'll give them reason to act. Step carefully. Move slowly. Study before reacting." He glanced over at the aliens again. Their faces were unreadable, yet he sensed calculation behind every posture and tilt of the head. These creatures did not fear because they were weak, they feared unpredictability. And humans were unpredictable. Daniel and his team began to move toward the settlement area, keeping their motions deliberate and non-threatening. They passed boulders and small ridges, using natural cover to make their approach subtle but safe. The aliens mirrored some of their movements, shifting their own positions slightly, clearly measuring distances, reactions, and intent. Daniel's mind ran through multiple scenarios. If the aliens attacked, if they withdrew, if they surrounded the humans, or if they tried to force communication. Every possibility was accounted for, mentally rehearsed, yet he did not show the tension in his expression. Calmness projected confidence, and confidence was often more persuasive than weapons. As they advanced, Daniel noticed details others might have missed. A pattern in the way alien guards stood near certain structures, the alignment of their equipment along the walls, and the absence of defensive barriers between some of their ranks. These gaps were subtle, suggesting they were confident that humans would not take aggressive action. Perhaps they assumed humans would act recklessly, as some species often did. Daniel, however, understood better. Humans were cautious, deliberate, and strategic. They measured consequences before acting. That unpredictability was far more threatening than any weapon. Anna whispered, "Daniel, are you sure we should be this calm? They're huge and armed." Daniel nodded without turning. "Yes, calm is our strength here. Our weapons are secondary. What they fear most isn't our rifles or explosives. It's that we choose how and when to use them. The fact that we could destroy them but might not unsettles them. That is power they don't understand." He gestured subtly for the team to spread out, maintaining cover while moving slowly. "Show control, not aggression. Awareness, not panic. Every human action tells them, we are disciplined and we will not act without reason." The aliens adjusted their stances, leaning slightly forward in a mixture of curiosity and caution. Daniel could almost feel their uncertainty. They were trained to gauge threats based on outward signs. Weapons drawn, aggressive motions, erratic behavior. Humans, by contrast, displayed none of those things. Each step, each motion was deliberate, calm, and purposeful. The aliens had no experience with opponents who wielded potential destruction but acted with restraint. Daniel's presence, even without firing a single shot, created tension and unease. Daniel glanced at the settlement ahead. Small buildings clustered around energy pylons with paths marked for foot traffic. The aliens' technology was advanced, but it relied heavily on intimidation and immediate response. Humans, however, did not rely on intimidation. They relied on judgment, strategy, and moral calculation. That difference created an unseen power. Daniel could feel the subtle shifts in the alien ranks as he and his team approached. Their eyes followed him with a mix of fear, curiosity, and respect. Ben pointed toward a raised platform where more aliens stood. They're signaling but not communicating vocally. Some kind of gesture language, maybe? Daniel nodded. Exactly. Observation, not engagement. They want to see our response. Keep slow, deliberate movements. Do not react impulsively. Every gesture counts. He took a small step forward, demonstrating calm and purpose. The aliens leaned slightly, adjusting distance, testing reaction. Their uncertainty was growing. They had not expected humans to advance without showing fear or aggression. Sarah whispered softly, "It's working." They're hesitant. Daniel nodded, eyes scanning the area. Yes. Fear comes from unpredictability. They cannot measure us by strength alone. Our calm, calculated approach shows them that we control our power. That is what they fear most. He gestured for the team to continue, maintaining cover and strategic spacing. As they moved further, Daniel studied their weapons. The alien rifles glowed faintly, charged with energy. If fired, they could cause devastating damage. Yet the aliens did not raise them fully. The reason was clear. Humans had the capacity to respond with equal or greater force, but did not act without necessity. That restraint unsettled them more than any direct attack could. Daniel understood that. True fear, he knew, was not of the weapon itself but of the choice behind it. Anna glanced at him, eyes wide. So, they're scared of us, for our restraint? Daniel nodded. Exactly. Not our weapons, not our power, but our judgment. We do not act recklessly. We do not escalate. That is their fear. A creature who could destroy but chooses reason is unpredictable. That unpredictability is more dangerous than raw firepower. The aliens shifted again, subtly, uncertain of human intent. They had faced aggressors before, but none like this. Opponents with the ability to unleash great destruction yet with complete control and deliberation. Daniel could almost sense the ripple of thought passing through their ranks. Why would they have this power but not use it? That question alone created tension and hesitation could be decisive. Daniel continued forward, every movement deliberate. He made small gestures of peace, hands slightly raised, posture relaxed, gaze steady. The aliens mirrored some of his gestures, though cautiously, as if trying to understand the human's reasoning. Daniel's team followed suit, keeping formation, scanning the area, and maintaining calm composure. No sudden moves, no gestures of aggression, only calculated presence. The settlement came into full view now, and Daniel noted the structure of the buildings, the placement of energy sources, and the movement of additional alien guards. Their observation was constant, but no shots were fired. Daniel's calm, disciplined approach had already influenced the dynamics of the encounter. The aliens were learning that humans were not predictable in the ways they understood: fear, aggression, or panic. Humans acted with judgment, and judgment was more powerful than instinct. As they reached a small clearing near the settlement, Daniel paused. He scanned every direction, cataloging every weapon, every guard, every potential hazard. The aliens maintained distance, observing, measuring, and calculating their response. Daniel turned slightly, signaling his team to halt and assess. "They are wary," he said quietly. "Not because they doubt our weapons but because they cannot predict our intent. That is strength. That is the power they fear." Lyra, a local scout who had come to meet them under supervision, watched from a distance. She had never seen humans before. She saw Daniel's calm movements, his quiet command of the situation, and the way his team followed without panic. "Humans," she whispered to herself. "They do not fear, yet they are cautious. Their strength is in their choice, not their weapons." Daniel glanced at her, acknowledging her presence with a small nod. Even without words he communicated his principle: restraint, awareness, and intelligence. These were the qualities that guided human action, and they were more powerful than the brightest weapon or the deadliest rifle. The aliens, observing from a distance, had already begun to recognize that. Their fear was not of destruction, but of deliberate, controlled power, wielded with judgment. With a final check of his team, Daniel motioned forward. They would begin initial negotiations and mapping of the settlement. Every step was deliberate, every gesture measured. The aliens watched, tense, curious, and wary, their previous confidence tempered by the realization that humans acted with intent and control. Daniel knew this first impression was critical. Humans could inspire respect and caution, not through fear alone, but through reasoned, principled action. And so, Daniel led his team into the settlement, fully aware that the real power of humans lay not in their weapons, but in their restraint, the choice to act only when necessary, the wisdom to measure consequence, and the courage to face fear without losing composure. The quiet tension of the alien settlement shattered suddenly. A group of scouts, tall and armored, moved quickly from behind jagged rock formations. Their weapons glowed faintly, and their movements were aggressive, fast, and precise. Daniel's instincts kicked in instantly, but he did not panic. He had anticipated this. The scouts were testing the humans, expecting fear, hesitation, or reckless retaliation. They did not anticipate calm, controlled action. "Shields up," Daniel commanded softly, his voice calm but firm. His team immediately activated portable energy shields, projecting a barrier in front of them. The shields hummed, creating a protective bubble around the humans. The scouts approached, clearly expecting resistance but not the kind Daniel displayed. They moved to intimidate, not destroy, yet their presence was a threat. Daniel assessed the situation, weighing each movement, each potential strike. Ben crouched low, scanning the attackers' formation. "They're coordinating," he whispered. "Trying to split us up. They expect panic." Daniel nodded. "Good. That's their weakness. They rely on fear and chaos. We rely on planning and control. Move slowly, stay within the shield perimeter, and respond only when necessary." He adjusted his stance, keeping his weapons ready but not aiming to fire. His team mirrored his composure, showing no signs of fear, only readiness. The first scout raised a weapon and fired a warning shot, a beam of energy that struck the ground near Daniel's feet. Dust and debris flew, but the humans did not flinch. Daniel moved deliberately, shifting the shield slightly to absorb the blast while signaling Anna and Sarah to reposition. Every movement was calculated, measured, and precise. The aliens hesitated at this, their assumption that humans would panic proving incorrect. "Daniel, they're circling," Anna whispered, her eyes wide. "They expect us to react aggressively. They'll attack if we show weakness." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. They fear us not for our weapons but because they cannot predict our choice. Stay calm. Maintain formation. We will not strike unless absolutely necessary." His voice was low, controlled, yet carried authority. The aliens, observing from a distance, paused for a moment, unsure how to proceed. The scouts advanced, testing the humans' limits, trying to provoke them. A second blast struck nearby, sending a shockwave through the rocky terrain. Dust and stones tumbled, but Daniel stood firm. He raised his arm, signaling for his team to hold position and assess the attackers' movements. "Notice," he said quietly, "they expect reaction, chaos, panic. Our power is not just in shields or weapons, it's in restraint." Sarah adjusted her visor, tracking the alien movements. "Daniel, they're getting frustrated. They don't understand why we haven't attacked yet." He nodded. "Exactly. That frustration is their fear. They don't know what we will do. That makes us more powerful than any weapon we could fire." He took a small step forward, remaining within the protective shield, showing confidence without aggression. The aliens fired again, this time aiming closer, attempting to force a human response. Daniel moved with them, adjusting the shield's angle and coordinating small, precise movements with his team. Not a single shot was fired in retaliation. Each human step, each gesture, displayed control and composure. The scouts' confusion grew. They had encountered species that reacted aggressively, panicked, or fled. Humans were different. Humans had power, but they chose when, and if, to use it. Ben whispered, "They're starting to hesitate." Daniel glanced at the advancing aliens. "Yes. Notice their movements. Hesitation is weakness for them. But it's our advantage. Stay calm, keep formation. Use cover but do not attack unless necessary. Remember, restraint is more powerful than aggression." A third scout fired a warning beam, narrowly missing Anna, who adjusted her shield just in time. Daniel signaled her with a hand gesture, confirming that her actions were precise and deliberate. He then raised his voice slightly, addressing the alien scouts directly. "We will not escalate unless provoked. Leave now and no one will be harmed. Do not test humans unnecessarily." His voice was firm, unwavering yet not threatening. The words carried weight because his stance, calm composure, and readiness confirmed he meant every word. The aliens paused, lowering their weapons slightly. They whispered among themselves, their language low and rapid. Daniel's visor translated a few phrases. "They do not panic. They choose. They control. What is their intent?" The scouts were confused, struggling to understand why the humans, clearly capable of powerful attacks, refused to use them. That unpredictability, that choice, was unsettling. Humans were dangerous because they could act at the right moment, not because they had to act. Daniel noticed the subtle shift in their approach. The scouts were circling less aggressively now, maintaining distance while observing carefully. He signaled his team to continue slow movement forward, staying within the shields and keeping awareness high. Every step was deliberate, showing humans' ability to control not only their actions but also the situation around them. Anna whispered, "Daniel, I think they're scared. Not of our weapons but of our choice." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. They understand the power of restraint. That is what unsettles them. Humans could destroy them in seconds but we do not. That makes our presence unpredictable, and unpredictability is terrifying to those who rely on brute force." The scouts attempted another maneuver, flanking from the left. Daniel anticipated it, signaling Ben and Sarah to adjust their positions. Shields moved fluidly, and the team's alignment shifted subtly to counter the attempt. The aliens hesitated again, realizing their plan to provoke a reaction had failed. Humans acted with logic, strategy, and principle. They were not driven by anger or fear. They acted with reason, and that reason made them formidable. Daniel spoke quietly to his team. "Hold steady. They're testing us, trying to find a weakness. There is none. Our strength lies in control, not violence. They fear humans because we can act, and we may choose not to. That uncertainty is power." The aliens launched a synchronized attack, aiming to force a reaction. Daniel calmly assessed the situation, moving within the shielded perimeter. He repositioned the humans to optimize coverage and minimize risk. No shots were fired. The attack was neutralized by strategy and positioning alone. The scouts exchanged confused looks, their expectation of panic unmet. Humans did not panic, they calculated. Humans did not react recklessly, they adapted. Lyra, watching from a safe distance, whispered to herself, "They have power, but they choose to control it. That is what scares them." Daniel caught the whisper without turning, nodding subtly. The point was clear: human discipline, intelligence, and restraint created strength far beyond any weapon's power. The scouts finally withdrew, maintaining distance, their confusion evident. Daniel's team remained alert but unaggressive. He lowered his shield slightly, signaling calm. "They will return if they perceive weakness," he said. "But we've already shown them that humans are not predictable. That alone has changed the encounter." Ben looked astonished. "They expected us to fight. They expected chaos." The sun dipped lower over the alien planet, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Daniel scanned the horizon carefully, noting small movements among the distant hills. His instincts told him that the earlier scouts were only the first wave. A larger force could be approaching, testing humans once again. He crouched behind a jagged rock with Ben and Sarah at his side. "They'll try something bigger soon," he said quietly. "We need to use the terrain, not just shields, to protect ourselves." Anna, checking the scanner, nodded. "There's a natural choke point in the ridge up ahead. We can funnel them there if they advance." Daniel smiled faintly. "Exactly. We control where they fight. Let them come to us. If they act recklessly, they'll step into our traps without realizing it. Observation and preparation are more powerful than firepower alone." The team began setting simple but effective traps. Tripwires that triggered harmless energy nets, sensors to track movement, and decoys to mislead the approaching force. Daniel directed every placement with careful precision. "We want them to think they have the advantage," he said. "But our advantage is patience and control. They will test us because they believe we are impulsive. We will show them otherwise." Hours passed as the sun sank lower. Shadows deepened, and the rocky ground became difficult to navigate. Daniel and his team remained alert, scanning every ridge, cliff, and crevice. They moved slowly, quietly, setting final sensors and arranging the environment to their advantage. Each step, each gesture was deliberate, signaling that humans acted with purpose, not panic. Finally, the larger alien ambush appeared. A group of heavily armored warriors advanced from the ridge, carrying larger energy weapons. Their movements were coordinated, precise, and aggressive. But Daniel did not panic. He raised a hand, signaling his team to stay calm. "Remember," he said, "our strength is discipline. They expect us to react recklessly. We will not. We control when and if we act. That control is more dangerous than their weapons." The aliens fired, energy beams streaking toward the humans. Daniel's team took cover behind rocks, activating shields at the perfect moment. None of the weapons struck the humans, though the blast sent dust and debris flying. Daniel signaled for the team to remain patient, keeping the traps ready. Every movement was calculated, every reaction measured. As the alien force pressed forward, they unknowingly stepped into the traps Daniel had prepared. Energy nets shot up from the ground, temporarily immobilizing the attackers without harm. Sensors triggered alarms, confusing the aliens and breaking their formation. Daniel's team moved carefully, herding the confused group toward a narrow pass in the ridge. The humans never fired a single lethal shot. They relied entirely on strategy, terrain, and patience. The aliens began to whisper among themselves, their language sharp and hurried. Daniel's visor translated fragments. "Humans are not like other species. They do not strike immediately. They control themselves. They are dangerous." The message was clear. The aliens were beginning to understand the true power of humans: discipline, strategy, and moral restraint. The uncertainty created by humans' choice not to kill unnerved them more than any weapon could. Ben, crouched behind a boulder, whispered, "Daniel, they're scared. They expected us to panic and fire. And we didn't." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. They fear not our weapons but our restraint. That is strength they do not understand. Remember, restraint and choice are as powerful as any laser or plasma cannon." The alien force tried to regroup, attempting to flank the humans from both sides. Daniel anticipated this. He signaled his team to adjust their positions, subtly moving without drawing attention. Energy nets were reset, sensors recalibrated, and the terrain's natural obstacles were used to channel the attackers. Every step, every motion was part of a larger plan. The humans were in control even when surrounded. Anna glanced at him, eyes wide. "They don't know what to do. They expected chaos, panic, or aggression. And we've given them none of it." Daniel's expression was calm. Patience, observation, and control. That is what unsettles them. Our choice to act, or not act, is more powerful than any weapon we could fire. Every species we face fears unpredictability, and humans are unpredictable in restraint. The alien leaders appeared at the rear of the attacking force, observing the battle closely. They saw their soldiers caught in the nets, their formation broken, and yet not a single human had fired lethally. They whispered among themselves, the translation showing phrases like, "We cannot predict. They could destroy us. They do not." The fear was not in the humans' weapons but in their actions, or deliberate inaction. Daniel used this moment to communicate subtly. He raised a hand, signaling a pause. His team maintained position, ready but unaggressive. The aliens hesitated. The humans were not surrendering, not panicking, not escalating. They controlled every moment, and that control was disarming. Every alien in sight began to understand that humans' greatest weapon was judgment, patience, and moral discipline. Sarah whispered, "I've never seen them hesitate like this. They expected immediate aggression and it didn't come. They're scared." Daniel nodded, scanning the remaining attackers. "Exactly. They fear our choices. Humans can destroy if we choose to, but we may choose not to. That unpredictability terrifies species that rely solely on brute strength." The battle continued slowly. Daniel's team moved cautiously, guiding the confused aliens through the traps and natural terrain. No one was harmed, but the humans' control of the situation was absolute. The aliens had no predictable pattern to counter. Every step they took revealed the humans' calculated patience and strategic intelligence. Fear spread through the ranks and hesitation replaced aggression. Finally, the alien force withdrew partially, regrouping at a safe distance. They were exhausted, confused, and unsettled. Daniel lowered his hand but kept his eyes vigilant. "They've learned the lesson," he said softly. "Humans are not reckless. Humans act with purpose. That lesson alone has more impact than a dozen battles." The sun dipped lower over the alien planet, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Daniel scanned the horizon carefully, noting small movements among the distant hills. His instincts told him that the earlier scouts were only the first wave. A larger force could be approaching, testing humans once again. He crouched behind a jagged rock with Ben and Sarah at his side. "They'll try something bigger soon," he said quietly. "We need to use the terrain, not just shields, to protect ourselves." Anna, checking the scanner, nodded. "There's a natural choke point in the ridge up ahead. We can funnel them there if they advance." Daniel smiled faintly. "Exactly. We control where they fight. Let them come to us. If they act recklessly, they'll step into our traps without realizing it. Observation and preparation are more powerful than firepower alone." The team began setting simple but effective traps. Tripwires that triggered harmless energy nets, sensors to track movement, and decoys to mislead the approaching force. Daniel directed every placement with careful precision. "We want them to think they have the advantage," he said. "But our advantage is patience and control. They will test us because they believe we are impulsive. We will show them otherwise." Hours passed as the sun sank lower. Shadows deepened, and the rocky ground became difficult to navigate. Daniel and his team remained alert, scanning every ridge, cliff, and crevice. They moved slowly, quietly, setting final sensors and arranging the environment to their advantage. Each step, each gesture was deliberate, signaling that humans acted with purpose, not panic. Finally, the larger alien ambush appeared. A group of heavily armored warriors advanced from the ridge, carrying larger energy weapons. Their movements were coordinated, precise, and aggressive. But Daniel did not panic. He raised a hand, signaling his team to stay calm. "Remember," he said, "our strength is discipline. They expect us to react recklessly. We will not. We control when and if we act. That control is more dangerous than their weapons." The aliens fired, energy beams streaking toward the humans. Daniel's team took cover behind rocks, activating shields at the perfect moment. None of the weapons struck the humans, though the blast sent dust and debris flying. Daniel signaled for the team to remain patient, keeping the traps ready. Every movement was calculated, every reaction measured. As the alien force pressed forward, they unknowingly stepped into the traps Daniel had prepared. Energy nets shot up from the ground, temporarily immobilizing the attackers without harm. Sensors triggered alarms, confusing the aliens and breaking their formation. Daniel's team moved carefully, herding the confused group toward a narrow pass in the ridge. The humans never fired a single lethal shot. They relied entirely on strategy, terrain, and patience. The aliens began to whisper among themselves, their language sharp and hurried. Daniel's visor translated fragments. "Humans are not like other species. They do not strike immediately. They control themselves. They are dangerous." The message was clear. The aliens were beginning to understand the true power of humans: discipline, strategy, and moral restraint. The uncertainty created by humans' choice not to kill unnerved them more than any weapon could. Ben, crouched behind a boulder, whispered, "Daniel, they're scared. They expected us to panic and fire. And we didn't." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. They fear not our weapons but our restraint. That is strength they do not understand. Remember, restraint and choice are as powerful as any laser or plasma cannon." The alien force tried to regroup, attempting to flank the humans from both sides. Daniel anticipated this. He signaled his team to adjust their positions, subtly moving without drawing attention. Energy nets were reset, sensors recalibrated, and the terrain's natural obstacles were used to channel the attackers. Every step, every motion was part of a larger plan. The humans were in control even when surrounded. Anna glanced at him, eyes wide. "They don't know what to do. They expected chaos, panic, or aggression. And we've given them none of it." Daniel's expression was calm. "Patience, observation, and control. That is what unsettles them. Our choice to act, or not act, is more powerful than any weapon we could fire. Every species we face fears unpredictability, and humans are unpredictable in restraint." The alien leaders appeared at the rear of the attacking force, observing the battle closely. They saw their soldiers caught in the nets, their formation broken, and yet not a single human had fired lethally. They whispered among themselves, the translation showing phrases like, "We cannot predict. They could destroy us. They do not." The fear was not in the humans' weapons but in their actions, or deliberate inaction. Daniel used this moment to communicate subtly. He raised a hand, signaling a pause. His team maintained position, ready but unaggressive. The aliens hesitated. The humans were not surrendering, not panicking, not escalating. They controlled every moment, and that control was disarming. Every alien in sight began to understand that humans' greatest weapon was judgment, patience, and moral discipline. Sarah whispered, "I've never seen them hesitate like this. They expected immediate aggression and it didn't come. They're scared." Daniel nodded, scanning the remaining attackers. "Exactly. They fear our choices. Humans can destroy if we choose to, but we may choose not to. That unpredictability terrifies species that rely solely on brute strength." The battle continued slowly. Daniel's team moved cautiously, guiding the confused aliens through the traps and natural terrain. No one was harmed, but the humans' control of the situation was absolute. The aliens had no predictable pattern to counter. Every step they took revealed the humans' calculated patience and strategic intelligence. Fear spread through the ranks and hesitation replaced aggression. The sun was high in the sky, casting sharp shadows across the alien settlement. Daniel stood quietly with his team near the edge of a rocky plateau. The recent encounter with the ambush had left the alien scouts cautious, but whispers among their ranks suggested the arrival of leaders. Tall, imposing figures moved with precision, their armor gleaming under the alien sun. They approached slowly, curious but wary, observing every human movement. Daniel studied them carefully. He could sense their hesitation. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were decision-makers, observers, and strategists. Every step they took was deliberate, signaling authority. Daniel kept his posture relaxed but alert, showing no sign of fear. His team mirrored him, maintaining calm composure and keeping their shields ready. No one moved recklessly. No one acted impulsively. The lead alien, taller than the rest, with silver-tinted armor, stepped forward and raised a hand. It was a universal gesture of pause, not aggression. Daniel responded with a subtle nod, recognizing their intent to communicate without immediate conflict. "We are not here to fight," he said softly, projecting his voice clearly. "We act with purpose. We defend only when necessary." A low hum vibrated through the settlement. One of the alien weapons, massive and clearly experimental, began to spark and vibrate uncontrollably. The energy buildup was dangerous. It threatened to detonate and harm anyone nearby, aliens and humans alike. A gasp spread among the alien leaders and soldiers. Their surprise was evident. Their technology, impressive as it was failing. Panic flickered briefly across their faces. Daniel's instincts kicked in immediately, but he did not panic. He understood the malfunction could escalate quickly, and inaction would result in unnecessary casualties. Yet he acted with control, not aggression. He stepped forward calmly, signaling his team to remain alert but hold position. "Stay back," he instructed quietly. "Let me handle this." He approached the malfunctioning device with precise movements, studying its structure. Sparks flew and the air vibrated with energy, but Daniel moved deliberately, each step careful, each action calculated. His hands adjusted the outer casing, grounding energy lines and redirecting the charge safely. The massive device stabilized slowly, emitting a faint hum instead of a violent burst. He had prevented potential disaster without firing a single shot, without causing harm. The alien leaders watched, their eyes wide with a mixture of astonishment and respect. They had assumed humans would act recklessly, using any opportunity to assert dominance or attack. But Daniel had shown restraint, patience, and careful calculation. He had the ability to act destructively, yet chose to prevent harm instead. That choice, that principle, was a display of true power they had never anticipated. Ben whispered, "Daniel, they're staring. They didn't expect that." Daniel nodded. "No, they didn't. That is exactly why they fear humans. Not our weapons, not our strength, but our ability to choose wisely. We could have destroyed this device or even them if we wanted. But we acted to protect life. That choice unsettles them more than a battle ever could." One of the alien leaders moved closer, speaking softly in their language. The translation flickered across Daniel's visor. "You could have harmed us. You chose not to." "What?" Daniel raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Because strength without control is meaningless. Power used recklessly destroys both the user and others. Humans respect life. We act with purpose, not impulsively. That is our power." The aliens paused, absorbing the words. Their expressions shifted from confusion to contemplation. They had always measured strength by weapons, aggression, and dominance. Humans were different. Humans had power, and they could use it in unimaginable ways, yet they exercised restraint, discipline, and moral judgment. That was a kind of strength the aliens could not measure, could not predict, and therefore feared. Lyra, observing from a distance, whispered quietly, "They expected violence, and instead humans acted to protect. That is more terrifying than any weapon." Daniel caught her gaze and nodded subtly. "It is not fear of destruction they feel, it is fear of judgment, control, and restraint. A species that can destroy but chooses not to is unpredictable. And unpredictability terrifies those who rely on aggression." The alien leaders took small steps back, reassessing the humans. Their soldiers mirrored them, hesitation replacing the earlier aggression. The malfunctioning device had been a test, an opportunity to exploit weakness, but Daniel's calm intervention had shown them that humans were not easily provoked. They understood danger, yet acted with logic and moral principle. That understanding made humans formidable. Daniel turned to his team. "Keep watch but remain calm. They are observing, not attacking. That is our advantage. Our restraint is stronger than any weapon they possess. Let them process that." Anna nodded, adjusting her shield slightly, while Ben and Sarah scanned the perimeter, ready but unaggressive. Every human action reinforced the message. Humans had the ability to destroy, yet chose reason over chaos. The alien leaders whispered again, their voices urgent and low. The translation flickered in Daniel's visor. "They are dangerous because they control themselves. They could act but they choose not to. Their strength is in judgment, not force." The humans had disrupted their assumptions. They had expected panic, aggression, or reckless retaliation. Instead, they had found calculation, calm, and moral clarity. That combination was unpredictable and frightening. Daniel observed the remaining alien soldiers. Some of them shifted positions, unconsciously creating distance. They were reassessing risk, unsure how to measure humans' true capability. Daniel understood this hesitation. It was the mark of respect and fear intertwined. The aliens had seen firsthand that humans could destroy but chose to act ethically. That was an alien concept, difficult to understand but impossible to ignore. He signaled his team to advance slowly toward a safer area within the settlement. Each step was deliberate, controlled, and confident. The alien leaders did not follow aggressively. Instead, they watched carefully, calculating, uncertain how humans might respond next. The team's movement reinforced their lesson. Humans acted with intelligence and principle. That principle guided their actions, and principle was stronger than raw aggression. Daniel paused at a small ridge, allowing his team to regroup. "They will think twice before attacking recklessly," he said quietly. "They now understand that humans have power, yes, but more importantly, humans have choice. And that choice cannot be predicted or controlled. That is why they fear us." Lyra stepped forward cautiously, her eyes wide with awe. "I have never seen a species act like this. You could have destroyed everything, yet you chose protection and patience." Daniel nodded gently. "That is human nature. We respect life and act with reason. Strength is measured not by how much you can destroy but by when, and if, you choose to use it. That lesson is more powerful than any weapon." The alien leaders finally spoke, their tone a mixture of caution and curiosity. The translation read, "Your power is not in your weapons. It is in your control, your restraint, and your judgment. That is dangerous beyond what we imagined." Daniel inclined his head slightly, acknowledging their statement. He did not boast. He simply understood that their fear was not of battle, but of principle and intelligence. As the malfunctioning weapon hummed safely in the distance, Daniel's team moved forward, securing the area without causing harm. The aliens observed, whispering among themselves. They had expected chaos, panic, or aggression. Instead, they had encountered humans who were strong, controlled, and morally principled. That experience would linger in their minds long after the humans departed. Daniel looked at his team. "Today we demonstrated the real power of humanity. Weapons are tools, yes, but the true strength is in discipline, strategy, and ethical choice. They feared not our technology but the fact that we could choose to act wisely or destructively. That is what makes humans formidable." Anna, scanning the horizon, whispered, "They will respect us now, and fear us in a way they never feared any other species." Daniel nodded, observing the alien leaders retreat slightly, still uncertain of how to approach or challenge humans in the future. "Exactly. They cannot predict us because we act with principle, not impulse. That is the power they cannot counter." The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the settlement. Daniel and his team prepared to move to their next position. They had successfully prevented disaster, controlled the engagement, and left a lasting impression. The aliens had seen humans wielding immense potential without succumbing to fear, anger, or recklessness. That lesson would shape interactions for generations. Lyra, standing a short distance away, watched the humans leave. She whispered in awe, "They could destroy us all, but they do not. That is more terrifying than their weapons. That is strength." Daniel turned his head slightly, acknowledging her words silently. He knew that humans' legacy was not only in technology, but in the principle that guided its use. That principle, the ability to choose, to act wisely, and to restrain themselves, was what made humans feared and respected. By the time Daniel's team reached the safety of the ridge, the alien leaders had fully withdrawn, their soldiers cautious and uncertain. The humans had demonstrated power without violence, intelligence without aggression, and principle without compromise. That demonstration had altered perceptions. The aliens now understood that human strength lay not merely in weapons, but in the conscious choice to act, or not act, and the moral clarity behind that choice. Daniel allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. The encounter had been intense, yet controlled. The lesson had been clear. Humans were not feared for their technology alone, but for the wisdom, restraint, and discipline that guided its use. That principle would resonate throughout the alien society, shaping their respect, and their fear, of humanity for years to come.